Welcome back to the channel. Today we've got a brilliant chess battle packed with tactics, strategy, and surprises. Let's dive right in. Wesley So advances pawn to d4. White pawn stakes central territory boldly, inviting Daniele Vocaturo into an all-out strategic duel. Daniele Vocaturo develops knight to f6. Black knight jumps out, eyes e4 and prepares flexible counterplay against white's center. Wesley So pushes pawn to c4. White pawn challenges the center, supporting d4 and preparing space for queenside pressure. Daniele Vocaturo fianchettos, bishop, with g6. Black prepares long diagonal power and a resilient kingside fortress around his future king. Wesley So brings knight to c3. White knight supports d5 and c4, improving central coordination and future attacking prospects. Why? Daniele Vocaturo places bishop on g7. Black's bishop dominates long diagonal, backing central control and latent kingside threats. Wesley So strikes e4 with pawn. White seizes full central control, opens lines and signals readiness for an aggressive middle game. Daniele Vocaturo shores up center with d6. Black solidifies pawn chain, preparing counterstrike and keeping the position compact and resilient. Wesley So develops knight to f3. White knight eyes, key f5, and g5 squares, bolstering kingside structure and piece harmony. Daniele Vocaturo castles, kingside 0-0. Black tucks king to safety, connects rooks and comets to a dynamic, flexible setup. Wesley So plays bishop to e2. White finishes development calmly, preparing to castle and coordinate rooks for central actions. Daniele Vocaturo thrusts pawn to e5. Black challenges white's center energetically, aiming to open lines and provoke weaknesses. Wesley So castles 0-0. White king safely tucked, rook activated. Wesley signals full readiness for middle game fireworks. Daniele Vocaturo develops knight to chicks. Black increases pressure on d4 and f5, mobilizing pieces for central and queenside operations. Wesley So advances pawn to d5. White clamps the center, gains space, forcing black to find precise defensive redeployments. Daniele Vocaturo reroutes knight to e7. Black repositions for defense, eyeing g6 and h8 squares to contest white space. Wesley So shifts knight to a1. White maneuvers, knight back aiming for c2 or d3, building a flexible attacking formation. Daniele Vocaturo relocates knight to d7. Black reinforces e5, prepares c5 breaks, and keeps tension inside the center. Wesley So plays f3 pawn. White fortifies e4, readies, g4 advances, and stabilizes the central pawn backbone for an assault. Daniele Vocaturo pushes pawn to 5. Black counterpunches energetically, challenging white's structure and seeking kingside opening chances. Wesley So develops bishop to e3. White brings bishop actively, aiming at queenside and central pressure while supporting d4 dynamics. Daniele Vocaturo storms forward with f4. Black aggressively cranks tension, forcing pieces into awkward squares and cramping white's kingside. Wesley So retreats bishop to f2. White bishop pulls back to a safer diagonal while keeping influence over central and kingside squares. Daniele Vocaturo advances pawn to g5. Black comets to a pawn storm, aiming to pry open white's kingside and create attacking mass. Wesley So places rook on pawn. White activates rook on c-file, preparing to contest queenside and support c-pawn incursions. Daniele Vocaturo lifts rook to f6. Black rook leaps into action, eyeing lateral swings to support the kingside onslaught. Wesley So repositions knight to d3. White knight centralizes, aiming at f5 and fowler to blunt black's aggressive pawns. Daniele Vocaturo plays b6 pawn. Black secures queenside structure, prepares bishop development and restricts white's c5 ambitions. Wesley So advances pawn to b4. White pushes queenside space with tempo, threatening to open lines and undermine b6 control. Daniele Vocaturo shifts rook to h6. Black's rook reroutes aggressively, preparing to pressure white's kingside from an unusual angle. Wesley So pushes pawn to c5. White breaks forward, fixing black's structure and opening lines for knights and rooks to invade. Daniele Vocaturo replies a6 pawn. Black prepares b5 counter, stabilizes queenside tension, and stops white's immediate expansions. Wesley So captures c6 takes e6. White pawn from c5 captures on 6, opening the center and producing wild imbalances with daring intent. Daniele Vocaturo recaptures c8 decides. Black pawn recaptures, restoring material parity, but leaving an altered dynamic central pawn structure. Wesley So thrusts pawn to g4. White launches kingside assault, seeking to undermine black's pawns and pry open attacking files. Daniele Vocaturo captures f6 d3. Black pawn from fowler captures on g3, initiating sharp exchanges and ripping open white's kingside shelter. Wesley So recaptures h6 d3. White pawn from h2 captures on g3, opening the h-file and returning balance while exposing kingside. Daniele Vocaturo develops knight to g6. Black knight reroutes to g6, eyeing f-hour, and e5 to challenge white's mounting pressure. Wesley So sidesteps king to g2. White king steps to g2, seeking safer cover behind pawns while staying connected to defense. Daniele Vocaturo centralizes knight to f6. Black knight returns to defensive central duties, ready to parry threats and contest key squares. Wesley So lifts rook to hone. White rook swings to hone, preparing to contest the open h-file and confront black's rook on h6. Daniele Vocaturo captures r6 hone. Black rook captures on hone, exchanging material and intensifying the chaotic battle near white's monarch. Wesley So recaptures k-shone. White king captures on hone, boldly entering the fray to reclaim material and protect his exposed position. Daniele Vocaturo thrusts pawn to b5. Black pushes queenside pawn, aiming to open files and generate counterplay against white's queenside structure. Wesley So develops bishop to e3. White bishop centralizes, coordinating defense and preparing to challenge black's advancing pawns tactically. Daniele Vocaturo plays h6 pawn. Black creates luft and a modest shelter, attempting to blunt white's potential g5 incursion. Wesley So advances pawn to f4. White preys at queenside tension, seeking to open lines and undermine black's b5 advance immediately. Daniele Vocaturo deploys bishop to d7. Black develops bishop, connects rooks and readies support for queenside and central exchanges. Wesley So captures xp5. White pawn from a4 captures on b5, opening the a-file and rupturing black's pawn shield decisively. Daniele Vocaturo recaptures xp5. Black pawn from a6 recaptures on b5, restoring structure but leaving open files and vulnerabilities. Wesley So maneuvers knight to f2. White knight retreats to f2, preparing defensive redeployment toward e4 or g4 as needed. Daniele Vocaturo posts knight to h5. Black knight heads toward f5, hunting for g3 or f4 outposts to pressure white's king. Wesley So tucks king back to h2. White king retreats to h2, seeking relative safety while maintaining coordination with defending pieces. Daniele Vocaturo invades with rook to a3. Black rook infiltrates the third rank, threatening pawns and sowing disarray in white's camp. Wesley So places queen on d2. White queen centralizes to d2, connects rooks and shores up defenses against the looming invasion. Daniele Vocaturo replies queen to 8. Black queen retreats to 8, reorganizing and preparing to swing into kingside tactical operations. Wesley So repositions queen to b2. White queen moves to b2, eyeing long diagonals and supporting queenside pawns with latent threats. Daniele Vocaturo returns rook to 8. Black rook retreats to the a-file, consolidating after the raid and seeking calmer play. Wesley So develops bishop to d2. White bishop shifts to d2, coordinating pieces and reinforcing central squares against black's knights. Daniele Vocaturo centralizes queen to f7. Black queen moves to f7, coordinating defense and keeping options to pressure white's king. Wesley So reroutes knight from c3 to done. White knight redeploys via done, aiming for e3 or b2 to reclaim central influence. Daniele Vocaturo sacrifices with nxg3. Black knight captures on g3, grabbing a pawn and unleashing tactical complications near white's king. Wesley So captures kxg3. White king captures on g3, bravely eliminating the intruding knight and accepting danger to restore balance. Daniele Vocaturo presses knight to f4. Black knight leaps to f4, establishing a thorny outpost threatening forks and creating sharp tactical pressure. Wesley So brings knight to c3. White knight returns to c3, contesting e5 and e4 squares while seeking to neutralize black's pieces. Daniele Vocaturo shifts rook to fight. Black rook moves to fight, preparing to contest files and bolster the precarious kingside defense. Wesley So places bishop on e3. White bishop centralizes to e3, defending key squares and preparing to exchange off dangerous attackers. Daniele Vocaturo pushes pawn to g4. Black thrusts pawn to g4, trying to pry open lines and displace white's coordinated defenders. Wesley So captures fx4. White pawn from f3 captures on g4, removing a menace and simplifying the tense kingside situation. Daniele Vocaturo advances pawn to h5. Black pushes h5, attempting to harass white's structure and create fresh entry points toward the king. Wesley So moves rook to gone. White rook swings to gone, lining up on the g-file to challenge black's pawn storm and regain control. Daniele Vocaturo captures ixc4. Black pawn from a5 captures on g4, intensifying open file play and provoking further tactical exchanges. Wesley So recaptures bxg g4, white bishop captures on g4, eliminating the pawn and bringing a powerful piece into crucial attacking formation. Daniele Vocaturo advances knight to d3. Black knight jumps to d3, occupying a dominant outpost, threatening tactics against white's coordination. Wesley So plays queen to a2. White queen moves to e2, coordinating defense and preparing to contest the dangerous knight and open lines. Daniele Vocaturo captures nx f2. Black knight captures on f2, grabbing material and creating immediate sharp threats around white's exposed king. Wesley So replies bsc7. White bishop captures on z7, removing black's bishop and simplifying tactical tensions to relieve pressure. Daniele Vocaturo recaptures qsd7. Black queen captures on z7, centralizing the queen and trying to maintain counterplay despite material concessions. Wesley So captures bx f2. White bishop takes on f2, regaining material and neutralizing black's aggressive knight presence near the king. Daniele Vocaturo shifts rook to f6. Black rook to f6 aims to support defenses and contest key ranks in a desperate holding effort. Wesley So repositions bishop to e3. White bishop returns to e3, consolidating center control and firmly protecting the king from lingering threats. Daniele Vocaturo plays queen to f7. Black queen slides to f7, attempting to coordinate last-ditch pressure while white's pieces look more harmonious. Wesley So moves king back to h2. White king retreats to h2, tucking into safety as piece coordination increasingly favors Wesley's position. Daniele Vocaturo brings king to f8. Black king steps toward shelter, seeking coordination with remaining pieces under mounting white initiative. Wesley So finishes with rg2. White rook to g2, consolidates dominance, seals file control, and converts initiative into an unavoidable winning finish. That's it for today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.